just a good old boy.
Alright, hopefully y'all can see there. I'm gonna pull this first one off. Alright, so I guess I should tell y'all what I'm doing. I'm putting a water pump on this mule because the heater wasn't working on it. Then we went to check the heater core on it to see if it was plugged. It wasn't. Then realized that the pump was not pumping basically any water through the system. So I decided just to change the water pump out. The water pump was bad. You can't see it in this clip, but the little gear that went on the end of it was just, it would sit there and spin on the shaft, so it wouldn't never even turn it or anything, hardly. And then the engine, it was also causing the engine to overheat too, which was another problem. So what I got to do to get this pump on is pull the belt drive off of this machine. As we go through here, you have to have a special tool to take one of these off, and I'll go over it here in a minute. But as y'all watch me here, I'm just pulling the two belt drive pulleys off of this thing, so that way we can get to the pump, because the water pump is directly behind the cover or the back plate that seals the belt drive system off. Horrible location. I don't know why they put it there. There's one bolt I can't get to with the cover on it that makes you have to do all this. We'll talk a little bit today about the cows, or cattle market in this year. A lot of people have been asking me questions, sending me or just articles and things like that they've been reading that's going on. There's a lot of stuff floating around, going around in the cattle industry right now with everything that's going on. There's a lot of unknowns. I can tell you this for sure, that RCAF has been pushing and fighting hard to get country of origin labeling put in the USMCA. We failed. Members association, everything failed, and it was not due to effort. Everybody out there that I know has called, contacted senators, House representatives, all the way up trying to get this done. Every time that we were called personally, we could never get a return phone call. We were polite. I was angry at times. I've called many times. Nobody cared. In fact, at one point, I got laughed at by certain representatives, personnel on the other end of the phone. And I emailed the president. I tweeted congressmen, senators, House representatives, whatever you want to call them, the president himself, Secretary of Agriculture. I emailed the White House probably 10 times, just over and over and over. I do know for a fact that there was over 10,000, at least 10,000 emails sent to the White House from producers such as myself wanting country of origin mandated put back in the USMCA. Their response was to us that buyers could just choose to buy American beef. So that just shows you how much knowledge they have on this situation. Then we also responded and followed up with probably the same amount of emails behind that, with no luck at all. Here is what I rigged up here for in place of the special tool to get this piece off. It's stuck on a shaft once you get the bolt out, and it won't pull off. So you have to have this puller to get this thing off. So what I did was took that 1/4 inch impact extension, shoved it up in there, and it fits perfectly like the there it is, like the special tool would, like that. It slides all the way up through that shaft and into there, and then you take a different threaded bolt than the one that's in it, and it has a second set of threads for the puller that's back further, and if you tighten it down, it will pop that thing off. Took me a little bit to figure out how exactly to get that thing off. It was a pain, but did get it off. Now I'm pulling the bolts out of this backing plate to get it loose after we slide off the other. And then I don't never take this off, this other pulley. I just pull the cover back. But yeah, so that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's a shame. But we do have a glimmer of hope. I was reading something interesting in a Beef Magazine article, which y'all know how I feel about beef board and all that mess, and anything beef. But they did have an article, and sometimes they tell on themselves in these articles. And the Chinese had a requirement before we went to putting tariffs on them, back before they really imported a lot of beef for the U.S., that all the beef going to China had to be labeled as to where it was from and inspected. And then them top that off, they have it to where their people inspect the process here in the United States before that product is sent to China. So I found that very interesting. But the bad thing is the article was stating that they were hoping that in the new China agreement that the president negotiated it to where it would be less stressful and more of a fair market to not have such stringent requirements on the U.S. cattle industry to produce them such clean, labeled, and everything else beef. In long and short of it, what it was is labeling. They want to label it so they could send cheaper foreign beef in from God knows where. The same thing that we're eating here every day, stamped and labeled product to USA, as long as it's ran through a packing house and inspected by the USDA computer with one person monitoring it. Yeah, so that's what they're basically asking for, and then they test the meat basically for everything we already do. And I think they didn't want it with hormones in it, which we don't put any hormones in our beef anyway. So I just found that to be a little telltale sign. So there is a glimmer of hope, maybe that didn't get taken out, and if it didn't, that will help the markets. Maybe that's why there's been a little bit of an uptick lately. Nobody really knows. My theory is it's because it's election year, and the president knows that cattle producers are not happy, and they probably told them, say, hey, y'all need to give them ease off a little bit, and that'll make some damn money, because we're getting a lot of heat on our end. Because the reason why we didn't get the U.S. In the USMCA MCOOL put in, which would have avoided any World Trade Organization ruling, was that was because the packers lobbied to the president's office that they would lose over 50% of their profits, even though they are already doubling their profits now, clearing well over $700 per animal. That goes across their assembly lines. Clearing, that's after cost. They're making that. It's more than we even get before cost as producers. And it's just it's crazy what's going on in our industry. There's a lot more I could talk about all this and things that's coming down the pipe. You're probably wondering, how is the Chinese getting around the World Trade Organization ruling? Well, the answer to that is they are not obligated to any World Trade Organization rulings. They are exempt. Maybe there's a glimmer of hope with this Chinese deal. That's enough for today. This part's going to be extremely long as it is, so we'll finish her up in part 2. Thank y'all for watching. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.